TBox Plus is an AI box, and what that means is that this box runs Android, and if your head unit or if your car supports wired CarPlay, it can hijack that connection and show you that Android experience directly on your touchscreen. If you have other methods of control, we'll get to that later, but for touchscreens, it works super seamlessly. Full disclosure, Carlinkit did send me this unit in for review, but they haven't gone over any of this before I'm telling you. I ran this for longer than I initially expected. I ran it for about 3, maybe closer to 4 weeks, and I have some opinions. Let's get to them. Just before we get into that, part of the reason that this took longer than I initially intended is that I was setting up or trying to figure out how the hell to set this up. This is an old car stereo from one of my previous cars that I can now use to actually show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm very excited about that because that means I don't have to sit in a hot car for extended periods of time. Now let's really get into it. Once you get booted up, this is what you're going to be presented with. The launcher over here taking up the main portion and the navigation over here on the left. This is what I have a lot of critiques about. I'll show you exactly what it does. So up here you have your clock, which shouldn't be a real shock, but this supports 12-hour. Shouldn't really need to say that, but the last one that I used, the AutoCast, was stuck to 24-hour, so very glad that that supports 12-hour. You have your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth indicators. Down here you're going to see your recent applications, and this button, all it is a home button. So let's say I am in YouTube. I can tap this and it'll take me home. Holding it doesn't do anything. Double tapping it doesn't do anything else. So that is a bummer. To do any of the more advanced quote unquote navigation, you're gonna have to use this floating button. If for whatever reason it's not showing up, go into the settings, scroll down until you see this floating button option, turn it on. Because what this does is it gives you all the other options. Going home, obviously you can still do. You can go back, recents, split screen. So I really wish this was built into here. Let's say, I'll show you exactly how to use split screen. So if you're in a supported app, like I know YouTube is, I can go into the app, tap this, open up the split screen option, and then I can choose another application that supports split screen. In this case, I'm going to choose ES. And as you can see, we have 2 applications side by side. If you want to get rid of one, you can just expand it the other way and it'll get rid of the other one. So that is super handy occasionally. And for recents, you can tap on this, tap on the recents, and then you'll see your recents in a carousel. So unfortunate that you have to rely on this, but that's how you get around it. The launcher itself is one gigantic list of applications. It's just going to show you everything that you have installed in one big list. This is Android, so you can just go to the Play Store and download whatever it is that you want. So for me, for example, I usually use Nova 7 or Nova Launcher. I don't have a whole lot set up right now, but this is more of a traditional Android experience. You can put your applications on the home screen. You have your applications, the rest of them here in a list. The application that you're going to be using for your wireless Android Auto, wireless CarPlay is AutoKit. AutoKit works, it feels very similar to the application that AutoCast had, but this one works in a higher resolution, and I can tell because in my current daily driver, it is going into a higher resolution mode than my previous AutoCast system. One limitation of running AutoKit is that you're gonna need to use a LTE data connection if you want to be able to use data for other applications and this at the same time. Once you are in Android Auto, if you want to get out, you can just tap on the screen, use the floating button to get out, or you can swipe on one of the edges and use this button to get out also. Either of them work, but expanding on what I mentioned earlier. So the way AutoKit works, it's running a Wi-Fi connection or a hotspot connection using the Wi-Fi antenna from the Carlinkit unit to your phone. And because of that, it's not going to be able to use the Wi-Fi also to connect to the Android application. So for example, if I wanted to run YouTube at the same time, while I have AutoKit running, it tells me you're offline. And up here in the corner, we can see that the hotspot's running. If you want to be able to do that, you can. You're just going to need to run this with LTE or some sort of SIM. I ran this on Verizon, no problem. But by default, it doesn't work. You're going to have to go into access point names. It's not going to open right now because I don't have the SIM in it actively. But you can go into access point names and make sure to change it to LTE only. Restart the unit, and that did it for me. It worked and picked up Verizon. I ran that for a couple of weeks with no real issues. For Rotary people, yes, you can make this work, but you're going to need a supplemental input method. I use a Bluetooth trackball, which works well enough, or you can use an application on your phone, at least on Android. I'll link the one that I use down below. It basically pairs your phone to things as if it were a keyboard and mouse. So definitely usable, but again, just not as smooth of an experience as if you had a touchscreen. But I did encounter a bug, at least with the rotary people again. So when you go to the settings, because you can move all the way into the settings, into the Bluetooth settings using the rotary controls. The issue is that, at least in this version of Android, when you go to pair something, it brings up a confirmation message. Hey, do you want to pair to this, yes or no? It wouldn't let me pan from no to yes with the rotary controls. Luckily, I have access to other units that do have touchscreens, so I could pair it on that device, move it over to the rotary setup, and it would work just fine. But I don't think that's going to be the case for a lot of people, so just keep that in mind. You might have better luck. I think the first time I tried pairing something, I didn't have that issue, but every other device going forward did. So just another quirk. You can make it work for my use cases because my daily is rotary only. It's totally fine. But if you really want to be interactive, you might just want to temper your expectations. In better news, this was way more stable than the previous box that I tried out. So that was awesome. The previous one that I tried out would reboot for me randomly a few times a week. This one, I haven't had it happen once. The biggest issues that I've seen with it is that my most recently or commonly used application, YouTube, would just randomly close sometimes. I couldn't really figure out if there was something going on in the background or not. It would happen like minutes after I opened it while I'm watching something, but I would much rather have that than the whole unit itself just randomly reboot. So definitely a big up for stability on this. I like it. The rest of the experience was pretty standard AI box type stuff. And by that, I mean, pretty good. If you aren't familiar, it's just so nice to be able to just download whatever apps you want. Most of them are going to be available on the Play Store directly, but if for whatever reason they're not, you can usually get them by using third-party sites like APK Pure, for example. Just be mindful when you're doing that to be a little bit careful, but you can get it done. For other stuff like wireless Android Auto, because that's what I can attest to, I run Android, the experience is going to be a little bit different from native. And what I mean by that, compared to running it directly on your car, there's a slight delay. You might notice it when you're skipping songs. Where I notice it is when I'm using navigation. Once you mentally adjust for that delay, it's not that big of a deal, but just something that you're just going to have to keep in mind, you know, and know what you're going to expect when you're getting into this. But like I said, I've been running this for quite a bit longer than I intended, and I'll probably keep using it. So if you have any questions, leave them down below and I'm going to do my best to respond there. If any of this stuff was helpful, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for potentially other interesting things. Thanks for watching. See ya.